All right, Jay, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I'd just like to thank you again, for taking the time to talk with us today. For those of you listening for the first time, my name is Dorian. I'm the host of NXT GEN podcast, and it's really nice to finally meet you. So first things first, can you just introduce yourself and Coexist Gaming so that people at home can get to listen and get to know you?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Jay, artistically known as Letta J. I am a recording artist who also is a CEO, and my company is called Coexist Agency, which is a hybrid agency that specializes in innovative brand expansion that combines physical and digital infrastructure with gamification.
Awesome. So starting off, can you just give us, the quick origin of Coexist Gaming? Is there any, story or experience that inspired the business?
Of course. Well, one, I'm a former fighting game champion, so I used to compete with games, but I've also been playing games since I was 4 years old. And I think one of the things that used to bother me a lot was I would go to different conventions and I never really saw as much diversity as I wanted to see in the industry. And then after we would leave the convention, there weren't places that we could really just convene and be and, kind of vibe out. We had all these things in common. And so I created a space that allowed community to actually coexist. But it wasn't just about being a gamer. It was about being a person that enjoyed inclusivity and representation and fun, people that maybe like anime and comics, cosplay, and that were thought leaders and entrepreneurs, just across the myriad of worlds that I exist in. And I just wanted people to have a place to be meaningful, to have conversations, and to coexist.
That's awesome. And I like how you slipped in the name of the brand right there, which is kind of, what leading into my next question was, and that's the name, it's pretty self-explanatory, but in its message. But can you just talk about the process of coming up with a name for your brand? It's such a scary and daunting task for so many first-time entrepreneurs. Was there a moment where you knew it just clicked, or did you always know you were going to go down this route?
No. It definitely did click. I was thinking of just several names. But it was actually my best friend at the time, when we were still best friends, but we were just talking about doing this inclusive gaming experience that would allow people to do more than just play games, right? And not just video games. It's board games, card games. It was really inclusive. And I was he said, we have to build an experience that makes it makes everything coexist. And I was like, that's it. And that's literally how the name came about.
Awesome. That's awesome. And what does gaming mean to you? And that's not just, of course, video games. It's the whole culture around it. Like you said, there's cosplay, there's so many levels to it. What is your experience like with gaming and this whole community? When did it really start? You mentioned 4 years old. There's definitely some sort of first game that you had there that you have in mind.
Yeah, so the first question, gaming to me means just it's inclusive and it's fun. That's what it was always meant to be. Personally, what I love is that I say that gaming is a diaspora, because it's not just about any one particular thing. It's really about, I almost want to say, a type of person that brings an essence and a series of experiences to its own culture. Gaming is like the grand equalizer. It's the great connector. It's not about gender. It's not about race. It's about synergies, symbiosis. And I think that's the power of it. There's 8 billion people on the planet, 4 billion of them identify as gamers. And to know what a gamer is, this type of person, there's a strong probability that yes, they love anime. Why? Because there are great stories behind anime. There are great stories in games. There's an emotional connection that attaches itself to you. You're empowered, or there's some kind of nostalgia. There's something. Same thing with comics. Same thing with cosplay. We love these things so much. We literally spend thousands of dollars to look like animated characters, And so there's this fabric of who people are that really connects them. And they're not always spaces that allow you to be that free, that liberated, that unadulterated, just kind of it's Tuesday and I want to dress like, Ivy from Soul Calibur, because I feel when I played her, she makes me feel like I can really, kick butt. And I want to feel like that in real life. And whatever you need to do to step into the place where you can embody the character that you need to be today, I think it's an industry that accepts and welcomes people, even when society doesn't.
It's awesome. I really like that. That's a great story. So, what games are you playing now? You mentioned that you were pro in the fighting game community. What were you pro in?
So I was competing in Soul Calibur, Dead or Alive 4, Virtual
Right.
Fighter 2, and Tekken Tag. Now I play more RPGs, like I'm replaying Far Cry 6. I love Red Dead Redemption, so like I will always play that. Just have like some games, like I love Ori. Like there's some games that are just very, absent-minded. I just kind of want to, my day's been long. I've been on calls all day, and so I just kind of get to unwind and just release it all, in the game. The Last of Us, I can never play The Last of Us enough, no matter how many times I beat that game.
So great.
It's so
Did you
good.
play Expedition 33 this year?
No, I haven't yet. It's on my bucket list. It's literally on my whiteboard.
If you're into the RPG, I cannot recommend it enough. It's not overrated or anything. Like it's
Okay.
incredible. So that's my recommendation.
Got it.
I think you're the first person that we've really had on the show that had a physical space, for people to come into and interact with their hobbies and passions and interests like that. Can you talk a bit about the creative process of creating, an inclusive physical space and the decisions that sort of went into that, whether art, what games to include, like how you're advertising it? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. It's very different now than it was when I first started the company. So part of that story and what's really inspiring about my journey to a lot of people is that I started the company in my Brooklyn duplex. So I literally had a 2-story apartment with 3 rooms that I used to Airbnb, and I made each one of the rooms game themed. There was an Xbox lounge, PlayStation lounge, Sega lounge, because I collected the systems. And so I had them in there as entertainment for guests. So there was already a mindfulness of paying homage to where gaming started. So I'm like, love retro gaming, and I wanted to make sure that there was representation of those retro games in there. But I also started modding the systems because I wanted people to be able to play multiple games. If they were on the original Xbox, would you play all of the greats that were on the original Xbox? Same thing with like PlayStation Classic, and then some of the Sega Genesis games, right? As we, my partner and I, as we started throwing like a monthly gaming party, we started to expand the repertoire of what was in the space because we wanted to make sure representation was always felt. So it was now not just the OG Xbox, but like the 360 into the Series X, and then like every system, in the the Sega Genesis, and then the Dreamcast, and then the Saturn, and then PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, and then of course 5 when it came out. And then like with Nintendo, we had the NES, we had the Super, we had the 64, we had the GameCube. So it was like about taking all that retro, because this is like our childhood, our life, how we connect. But then we also wanted to include the board game communities and the card game communities because one, they don't always have a lot of places to go and they're not always included. And so I was like, this is what inclusion looks like. So I opened up downstairs and I literally bought a bunch of tables and created lounge areas that were like, this is for card game, like lovers, and this is for board games, and put a bunch of board games. This is where the tabletop games were. And then we had suggestion boxes that we put throughout the entire game house because I wanted to know. I was like, if I don't play board games like that, tell us some of the things that you need in order to better support your experience. And so a lot of, fast forward now, we had 3 spaces to Brooklyn. They were all residential spaces. We closed them and opened up our first commercial space, which is in Times Square. Now there's 3 floors of all kinds of representation. For one thing, we have a music studio because we put music in games. We have a podcast area because a lot of our members, they have podcasts. They want to amplify their voices. We have a stage, then the speakeasy lounge downstairs. There's food, there's beverage, and there's thousands of free-to-play games. And everything that our members want, outside of pinball machines, because I want them, but they're really hard to find and they're expensive. Yeah, because now they're making a lot of them digital and it's not the same, So it's not easy to find them. But outside of those, which I'm trying to find for some of our newer spaces, I really like to have every type of game form representative in the space because I want every type of person that has been affected positively by them to be able to coexist with us. Yeah.
So, growing up and being like a video game lover, did you always know that this is sort of the path that you were going to go down? Did you ever see, this personal hobby of yours and this love of yours becoming like your livelihood and your career? Was this something that you grew up with? Did you always know you're going to be in sort of like the entrepreneurial video game space?
Never in a trillion years. Like, it's actually one of those things that I can't even believe. It's like, how is this my life? Like, my mom literally used to yell at me for playing video games. So, never, like, not even a little bit. I moved to New York for music, and I've been, singing and playing instruments since I was 5. So, music and math were honestly my life, and I was on a trajectory. I studied electrical engineering in undergrad, so I was in a trajectory of I don't honestly know. Like, I was gonna say I had amazing internships. I worked at, like, these corporate companies kind of in college, and they were great exposure. But the number one takeaway for me was, this isn't fulfilling for me. And I tell people all the time, you have to know who you are. You have to know who you are and what you're meant to contribute to the world. And I'm not the kind of personality to be in the cubicle. I'm going like crazy. You know what I mean? I want to connect with people. I want to be building things, literally. And I want to, take my ideas and make them real. And that's very rewarding for me. And to know that I can build community around the things that I'm passionate about is something that's fulfilling to me. So I never, ever thought that video games would be a part of my life in such an integral way outside of it being just a personal one.
And that's so awesome. I mean, like that's the kind of stories that I love to hear, like on this show. Is just never in a million years like dreaming that a personal hobby or interest or a passion could become someone's livelihood. I mean, it's really a dream come true, right? I mean, I hear this in like so many different cases of people who are into fashion and then they get like their own clothing brand. And I love the example that you've given, because video games are such a universal hobby. I mean, you gave the stat, I was going to say it myself, is that 4 billion people in the world identify as gamers. And for so many of them, it's like just a side passion or a hobby while they go clock into the cubicle. But I love this message that you give. It's awesome. But can you talk a little bit about, the startup of this business? I mean, you've talked a lot about the origin story, but really taking that step from like, oh, this is a fun thing where I like to invite people to play retro games and like play in these different consoles, to I can make this a business. I'm going to invest real money and real time into like a physical space. Can you talk about, taking that leap of faith? And was it like scary? Was it difficult?
It was very scary. But you know what? It didn't feel scary at the time. It was scarier moving into the commercial space. When I was in, my Brooklyn apartment, it was scary because I think I was wondering if I would be accepted as a woman in a very male-dominated industry. Like, I didn't know kind of what I would deal with. And my best friend at the time was a guy. So I kind of leaned on him really to be the face of it, because I just didn't know any other women CEOs of gaming companies. So that part was scary. But everything was very incremental and gradual. I was always spending money in it, like to really kind of grow it, because I was just really passionate about every experience. We started with a monthly event. It grew from like 70 people to literally hundreds of people every single month. So I think the scary part, there was several scary moments. Like, one, there was a line outside the door one time. People started arriving 20 minutes early, and I was like, oh my God. Because I'm just like, I'm gonna get kicked out of this apartment, So there were moments that were scary, but growth is scary. And I had to really kind of allow that to resonate. I knew conceptually growth is something that you have to be ready for, but sometimes until you're in it, you don't really know what it feels like. It's almost theoretical. And then when it's happening to you, you're like, what do I do? And so we kept growing. I kept opening up new spaces. And so it was scary because that's new financial commitments, right? That's a new lease. And so there was just always this mindfulness of, I have to ensure we stay authentic so that people can continue to resonate with what we're putting out. And so initially it was, this gaming party, but I was very intentional when I created the business model, because I wanted people to not just come there to play games. Funny enough, I knew that after talking to so many of the community, they all had lives, they had professions, they had dreams, they had goals. They were passionate about music and finance and real estate and theater and all these industries. And I think it was alarming for me because I realized I'm not alone. Like, you're used to you. I'm like, I'm a recording artist. I'm in tech. Play games, and I'm a sommelier. I worked in hospitality. I did these things and I thought that was my unique experience. But I learned that there were all these people that were not monoliths. They were all polymaths. And I was like, I'm going to build a world for us to coexist where you don't know who you're going to find in that room, because you're going to learn about their journey, because I'm facilitating a conduit, which happened to be the games, that allowed them to feel comfortable enough to share it with someone else. So the monetization of that model became very disruptive. We are the first membership gaming space in the world. We broke the pay-to-play model, where normally you would walk in to pay, like you would, it's free to go to Dave & Buster's and like Barcade, right? But you can't do anything until you pay to play the games. So we made everything free to play. And at one point we had like 10,000 free to play games, every system. And so you paid a day fee unless you were a member. If you were a member, everything was available to you and you could always enter, and then you got benefits, being a member. So people started coming in more. But then I wanted them to feel like the representation came from them. So we started allowing them to monetize their memberships and partnering with them. And then we learned that there was another tier of our members that had businesses. So we created another iteration of our membership that was a co-working model. And so it really was cumulative, but it became a very financially prosperous business in year one because people found value in what we were offering.
Right, that makes so much sense. And you mentioned this line going out the door and all these unexpected turns. Can you talk a bit about, because everything up to this point has seemed so successful and so great, but I'm sure that wasn't the case, especially in the beginning. Can you talk about, the first big challenge and some of the other more unexpected difficulties that come from hosting in a physical event space like this?
Yeah, for one thing, when we launched the membership, you got to think, I lived here. And so I slept on a couch. I had an 1,800 square foot apartment. If you're in Brooklyn, in New York, that is like a dream pad, right? And I'm sleeping on a couch because this is the ultimate sacrifice for me, right? And when we first opened the membership, we had 100 members, which means now I'm on the hook for curating an experience for them. We open up 3 days a week. So it doesn't matter if I'm tired, doesn't matter if I don't feel well, we provided food, beverage, and we turned on all those lights. So there were the bills in the beginning of it, right? Where you take that massive L, like the electricity bill. You know what I mean? Like going shopping and buying food. But when you start seeing people are coming from the Bronx, which is 2 hours away, Yonkers, Poughkeepsie, to come to Brooklyn, that never happens. And so there's there's just you don't get to call out. And so that's already a mental shift within itself. But also on the top floor, I had Airbnb guests. And so there was dealing with kind of people, wanting to come down, it's oh man, what do I do? Do I let him? So we ended up, that's a big part of how our model started to become more and more sophisticated. But, I think as we grew, definitely, I put this on my Instagram story. I spent a lot of money to keep from going to court because I almost got kicked out of that apartment, and that was very stressful. For one thing, moving out of that place into another one, because this was a place that thousands of people had come to love. This was an experience that they were attached to emotionally, mentally, for some spiritually. And, it's like the end of an era, it kind of felt like, so a lot of new beginnings, and you have to close some doors to have those new beginnings. And all of that stuff is really, really scary. And really, you don't always know how to plan for certain types of growth. You dream about it, but the process towards achieving that dream doesn't always go as planned.
Yeah, of course. And I really appreciate, you being vulnerable about that, because it's not something that's talked a lot about in the entrepreneurial space. You hear about all the success stories, you hear about here's where I am now, blah, 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 but the humble beginnings and, the hurdles and obstacles that you have to overcome to get where you are now,
Yes.
it's always so important to acknowledge that. And speaking of important acknowledgments, being a Black businesswoman, right, in this field of video games where it's always like, you think of the stereotypical like toxic white male behavior, and making a business, focused on inclusivity and coexisting within that space. Do you often take time to reflect on just how important your work is and how important your physical space is? You've mentioned in previous interviews and in previous podcasts, like just the importance of doing that in the industry. But personally, do you take the time to reflect on just how important and necessary that is?
You know what? I didn't always, and I think it's really important that you, first of all, thank you for saying that. I think it's important to surround yourself with like people that remind you of its importance. I will also say that's a really significant part of our community, right? You do this work, you see it, it feels like a thankless job until you go to the space and some random stranger hugs you and says, coexist feels like a hug I didn't know I needed. And the first time someone said that to me, I literally like felt a tear roll down my eye, and I was like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Because it was just the most beautiful thing that I could hear, because there's so much sacrifice that goes into it. And you know what? You're right. Those stories are not discussed, but I talk about them because other entrepreneurs, one, need to know. Like, you see the stuff, it looks very shiny, but they need to know that if you really want to do something and you really love it, that blood, sweat, equity that you pour into that, that is when you know that it's meaningful and it's bigger than you. Because if you don't feel like doing it and you could just walk away, why would anyone even want to, right? You're not gonna feel like doing it all the time. So you gotta know that there's a driving force, and the driving force for me is knowing that on the other side of that, there are people who the creation of this space gave them a home. It gave them a community. We've had couples meet and get married that met at Coexist. We've had business partners form businesses, artists that have gone on tour, artists that have signed record deals, people that have signed publishing deals from launching their games there. Like, it has been wildly transformative. And the thing that reminds me is when I'm meeting with the mayor or I'm meeting with a senator and they're like, oh, so you're building a gaming bar. And I said, no, I'm bringing an ecosystem that will transform your economy. You want to get elected again, I'm going to give you a lot of bragging rights. That's what we're doing. And so I get to remind them or help educate them about why this space is a magnet to people that are societally not always represented in the way they want. We have a massive LGBTQ plus community, and there are people that literally thank not just me, but our entire staff for being so authentically connected to whether they're a part of the community or they're allies. When the Gamer Awards, like GAYMER, asked me to host the Gaming Awards, I was so honored because they were like, this is an example of what allyship looks like. That is so much power when you know that you were uncomfortable for something bigger than yourself, and to see it really resonate with strangers that you now love. I just don't know a lot of things from me that are more powerful than that.
And you mentioned earlier, it was sort of a funny joke, but your mom like yelling at you for playing video games, like growing up, like staying up way too late, like hiding the DS under your pillow, like all that kind of stuff that people who play video games are far too familiar with.
Yeah.
How has the role of, your family's perception of video games and like, especially like, I guess your mom, from yelling at you and playing video games to growing up to turning this into like a very successful business and career, how has the perception of outsiders changed when you talk about video games now?
It's really something that blows my mind. So my dad is the one that's like, yeah, Jay's always played video games. She's always loved video games. I think you grow up, society teaches you as a woman, as a girl, girls don't play video games. Stop being weird, And so I did like hide the things that I enjoyed for a long time. And there are people that meet me and they're like, I didn't know you were so geeky. And I'm like, well, you didn't know me. Do you know what I mean? And I just think it's so funny because a lot of people have felt like that. And, it's interesting to know like your family, these are people that kind of like they grew up with you and you're hiding a piece of yourself from them because you just don't want to be weird. And I think so many people have felt like that for so long that now it's why I think so many adults are confused if they're not in our world. They're like, wait, millennials are the dominant demographic? I'm like, yes, we watched gaming become what it is. We had to hide that we loved anime. People got bullied for this stuff. And now it's mainstream. Now anime is the most streamed content on Netflix. And it's like all of this is connected. We can, people don't have to hide that they want to dress in cosplay anymore. Like it's accepted and we get to, and now there's like hundreds of thousands of us chasing experiences across the world. So I think, there's moments where like some of my family members have apologized to me. It's really interesting, and I was like, guys, it's okay. Like I'm healed. I healed from the trauma, but it is important, I think, that they've learned lessons too, to just frame your mindset on how you love and how you accept people. Because I think that there's something very, almost spiritual about what Coexist is doing in people's lives just by existing.
And being such a focal point, and I guess such a voice in this space, right? Pushing for something that is not exactly seen like in the gaming world, which is coexisting. What are some of the key lessons that you learned about yourself, as a leader, not only in the business world, but in, I guess, just this whole culture and community, and being sort of the face of this?
That I'm not a micromanager. I've learned that I am a transformational leader. So I'm a recording artist, but I'm also an engineer, right? So I am calculated and methodical and analytical. So I like to build infrastructure. I like to lay the foundation, which means I'm going to create the operation. I want to give you all the tools. I want you to ask me a million questions, because when it's go time, I want you to do the job, right? And that's my personality, but it's the kind of leader I am. So I challenge our team members. I go, I want you to be so good that you challenge me, you make me want to pay you more, because that's how good you are, right? I want to transform you to the next level of your greatness, and that's the kind of leader I am. I'm not the person that's going to be all over you, which means if you don't get it, you got to say something, because I'm not going to be all over you. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's really interesting, those type of personalities, because I'm very macro. And so while I understand the minutia and I like taking the very large thing and then extracting the nuanced information and the details, it's because I'm wanting to then build with them in mind, but I'm focused about that vision. It's like bigger, it's way over there, and like that's my job. And it's frustrating for people, I think, because I know that people are very inspired by me, but there's a level of access that people should not have to you, and it's tough for some people. And it's one of the things that you learn as a leader, because everybody isn't good at compartmentalizing the emotional from the intellectual, right? And so it's a very interesting sort of fine line between being a leader that understands their job as CEO, and then also being the community builder I am, that's like go team. They work together, but their access is worlds apart. They are very different. You can be on a football team, but that doesn't just mean you have access to the owner of it, right? You have a coach for a reason, And so it matters that I think that dynamic is executed very carefully.
What are your top 5 tips for someone interested in starting a business?
Top 5. Number 1, make sure you understand the problem you're solving. Make sure you know why you're meant to solve the problem. Make sure that you have and are continuing to heal from your personal traumas, because it absolutely affects a lot of things. Walk into your business with an understanding that you're not outnumbered, but make sure you're not out organized. It takes a team, like it does, to grow the thing. And then lastly, decide specifically if you want your business to be scalable or if you should be a sole proprietor. So just decide what kind of growth you want your business to have.
All right, awesome. So we've looked at the humble beginnings of Coexist. We've talked through the modern dealings of it. Where do you see Coexist in the next 5, 10, however many years?
Yeah, I love that question because it gives me a chance to verbally continue to manifest things. But I see Coexist houses all over the world. That's absolutely the goal, to make sure that there are inclusive, safe spaces everywhere. There are iterations of these safe spaces that make people across the globe feel not just seen, but like truly represented, with their voices being amplified, innovation just thriving because these places exist. Opportunities, resources are readily available because they exist. So that's one part. I also see our tech powering businesses globally, whether they are brick and mortar spaces or their e-commerce platforms. And so I see gamified ecosystems becoming a norm, and we completely trailblaze that path. That's the second thing. The third thing is we will gamify education. We will be a huge contributor to why the next generation of thinkers are not bashed for not being neurotypical. We will help break down to create a better understanding of what neurodivergence means, what it is, and most importantly, how people receive information and how they process the information that they receive. So I very much want to revamp the education system. Yeah, I think those.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Are there any new products or projects or collaborations that you're currently working on that you can sort of give us a little sneak peek or teaser into?
You know what? So there are several. We, as an agency that gamifies brands, we target a lot of non-endemic companies. So companies that have nothing to do with gaming, right? Beauty brands, wellness, finance, fintech, everything. One that I'm really excited about is actually gamifying one of the beaches on Cannes Lion, which is not the film festival, but the Festival of Creativity, right? And this is the largest one in the world. This is where companies, the biggest companies in the world, are sending their C-suite of executives to showcase how wildly innovative and creative they have been year to year. And this was my first year going to Cannes Lion, and I was completely blown away. I literally just bought my flight and my hotel to this week for Cannes Lion, which is in June next year. That's how excited I am to go and to be a part of this gamification on a high level.
That's awesome. And what is your, I feel like, I know what you're going to say, but what is your ultimate vision for your brand and your entrepreneurship journey? What do you want your legacy to be when you look back on it?
To create global impact that completely disrupted societal norms.
Yeah, I had a feeling you'd say something along the lines of changing the world, but it makes so much sense. And I totally can see that being a possibility for you, because just with the message and with the positivity that you bring to it, and with video games being like such a universal love, like, it's funny you bring up the 4 billion number earlier, and I feel like it's just so much more than that. It's just people who don't identify with it, that are playing like Cookie Clicker on their phone, that are playing Wordle every day,
Right.
board games. Like, it's such a huge space, and it's just such a great way for you to capitalize on it and to turn it into such a positive message and be such a positive force for good, in the world. And this is my real last question, but looking back on it, what is your all-time favorite moment from your career thus far?
You know what? So I think one of my all-time favorite, of my career, like Coexist, or?
Yeah, I guess Coexist specifically.
It would probably, at least now, because I'm always looking like future, next step. It will probably be getting the keys to our first commercial space, and then opening that door, because I put a thread out that said, remember that you prayed to be exactly where you are years ago. Live in this moment. Because when you're in it, it's really hard. You want a thing. You don't know what it feels like when you get that thing. You don't know what that feels like. And so, there's like levels of success. For one thing, success is always different to people. But you reach a milestone and everyone's like, oh my God, what does it feel like to be successful? And in the moment, you may not even view yourself as being successful, because you're like, I have so many responsibilities and burdens right now that this is really, really hard. But I remember being in the shower years ago in like 2022. I remember praying, asking God to please bless me to get our first commercial space. Like, I remember that moment as clear as day. I wanted nothing more than in that moment to take those 3 places I had, where I had to leave one of them immediately, put all that stuff in my apartment where I'm squeezing through arcade systems to go to the bathroom. I remember literally crying in the shower, asking God to please make this dream come true. And I remember staring at the front, and I actually remember getting off the train and walking to the physical space, and I felt different. And I thought it was interesting. I was like, I wonder, do I look different to other people? I felt like I was glowing, like I was shining. And it was a whole road and journey that you just couldn't possibly fathom. But that moment is so critical and so important. I will never forget that feeling, both of those feelings, and how the dreams and the prayers for one and then achieving it was just a testament to me feeling like I can do anything. I can do anything.
I love it. That's a great message, sort of to leave off on. Well, that's pretty much all I have question-wise for you today. Do you want to do any quick shout-outs, or tell us where we can find, some Coexist gaming locations and where we can look you guys up?
Yeah, of course. So we're Coexist Gaming on everything. On TikTok, we're Coexist Game House. And definitely, I want everybody to, reach out to us. Go to coexistgaming.com. Our website is a hub of information. You can see everything from how to host an event to how to become a member. You can even play some of the games that we've built on our website. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I'm Letta J Music on everything. LETTA Music. Join our Discords, join our, our LinkedIn communities, all of our social platforms, because we're excited to keep growing with community. Community is why we coexist, and it keeps us authentic.
Awesome. All right, Jay. Well, thank you so much again, for taking the time to talk with us today on the Next Gen podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening at home. I really appreciate just how thoughtful your answers were. Like, I love video games, so this is a really cool opportunity and interview for me to do. Great conversation. Thank you so much again for taking the time out of your busy day. And I hope you have a great weekend, coming up, and wish you the best in all future endeavors.